What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Dense Pixels podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brad, joined by my jet-setting co-host, Carrie.
What's up?
Did you fly back and forth twice in the past couple weeks?
No, so I flew out to Maryland last Monday. I took a red eye, and I was in Maryland from Tuesday through what ended up being Sunday morning. It was supposed to be just Tuesday through Saturday, but
yes, I saw your
United Airlines
tribulations at the airport on Instagram. So.
United Airlines sent me through travel purgatory. Long story short, they loaded the airplane and then we're like, oh no, there's a big storm in the middle of the country. And like, yeah, there is, like, it has killed multiple people. Like, there were tornadoes and really high winds and damaging hail and all of this. So we just like sat around on the airplane for 3 hours with our thumbs up our asses before being told that like it was canceled, and I ended up.
Oh, you had to sit on the airplane for? Mm-hmm. Oh my god, that's the worst.
Yeah, it sucked. Now I have ultimately gotten a travel voucher after having sent a very sternly worded email about the nonsense of the experience, in which multiple official United sources told us alternatively that we were going to divert through Denver, that we were going to divert through Las Vegas, and that the plane had been rescheduled to 9 a.m. the next morning, and that the flight had been canceled altogether. So it was a fucking clown show, and I was not happy about it. But regardless, I had a very good time on the East Coast, but I will be back in another week and a half to perform at Magstock with both of my bands. So if you are attending Magstock, both Buy Score and Premium Vintage will be playing on Friday.
I have been... And of course, by speaking this, I'm going to now jinx myself. I've been blessedly lucky when it comes to air travel, not having ever hit any like major delays or flight cancellations or anything like that. Like,
this is the first time I've had to deal with it. And it's one of these things where it's like, I know shit happens. Like, I know that sometimes weather happens and you can't really do anything about it.
They could have at least deboarded you guys from the fucking plane.
They shouldn't have boarded us in the first place. Yeah. They shouldn't have put us on the plane in the first place. And I don't know if this is some sort of like insurance bullshit where they have to put us on the plane and then like they get some sort of, you know, insurance policy through lost tickets. I don't know how it works. I'm assuming it's some capitalist pig bullshit like that. Where like whatever policy dictates that they like have to put us on the airplane. They shouldn't have put us on the airplane in the first place. And it was like we were on there for 2 hours before like even the flight attendant started offering people like water or anything. It was a fucking nightmare. So that's
awful. Capitalist pig bullshit. Early front runner for show title this week as well. By the way, good job by you.
Thanks.
We have 2 weeks worth of news, which is blessedly small, but relatively impactful. Yeah, relatively impactful.
We're at the point in the year where, generally speaking, all of our game developer friends are holding their news for Summer Games Fest, which is, of course, in June.
2 weeks away.
Yeah,
which I took. So back when I worked at GameStop, I would routinely take off the week of E3 because I enjoyed just kind of immersing myself in E3 stuff all week long, and I took vacation at work, and it just happened to be SGF week, and I completely did not realize it, but it was a nice happy accident that I have a vacation coming up that week to again sit and watch a lot of content and stuff like that. We must get started with something we missed last week, and I wouldn't say that we missed it, but it still feels we should give at least some lip service to all of the whiny men's, you know, the fucking Gamergate dudes who, like, as soon as I saw the trailer for the new Assassin's Creed, which it was called Shadows, I think, if I'm not mistaken, which looks awesome, by the way. It definitely looks like that they're, you know, copying off of Ghost of Tsushima's homework a little bit and just putting a different name on it.
100%.
Which is fine because Ghost is great, and putting Assassin's Creed in that world should hopefully also be cool. But as soon as you saw that the you know, the two protagonists that you'd be playing as in the game were a female ninja and a black samurai, my first reaction was, oh fuck, here we go. Like here comes all the whiny men on the internet that are going to be really upset at the fact that Assassin's Creed is now super woke because they've decided to have a female protagonist and a historically accurate black samurai in the game.
Yeah, like, it's worth noting that, like, there's been a lot of media, I would say especially over the last, let's say, 2 decades, of a lot of stories inspired by Yasuke. So Yasuke is number one, the earliest known African to appear in any Japanese historical records. But he was a retainer to Oda Nobunaga, who is, of course, like, an enormous figure in Japanese history. So he basically served, like, right under Nobunaga. The name Yasuke was given to him by Nobunaga. No one knows what his, like, actual, like, real name, like, where he was born or anything like that. They just know that, like, this was, like, a black man living in Japan and served under Nobunaga during the end of the Sengoku period. So it's just that people are basically trying to make this out to be some sort of, like, woke bullshit, right? But it's historical inspired fantasy is what this basically is. So I think it's cool as shit that they would decide to make Yasuke the protagonist. But of course, like, how dare they not have a white man as the protagonist?
Oh, that's not even my favorite. That's not even my favorite part of this faux controversy. My two favorite parts are the hand wringing and wanting to stand up for quote unquote historical accuracy in the game series, where the underlying, like, plot is, like, there's this race of proto gods that left all these, like, artifacts all around, and
right.
We've been looking at very loose interpretations of world history.
Right.
That's number one.
But to complain about historical accuracy when they're literally basing it off of historical records. But yeah, so Assassin's Creed Shadows, I guess, is due out
this
in
year,
November.
supposedly. Yeah.
Yeah, November of this year. Takes place during the final stage of the Sengoku era. Features Oda Nobunaga at the height of his power. Will focus on key historical events, including Nobunaga's assault on the Iga province, a significant battle involving the Iga Ikki, known for their ninjutsu arts, and will explore central Japan, including Kyoto, Kobe, Osaka, and the Iga province, with historically accurate castles such as Takeda Castle. So, like, it's a really interesting period. I feel like a lot of people really love the sort of feudal era of Japan's history. There's a lot to explore there, but I mean, the feudal era went on for quite a long time. So this is very much like the end of that era.
Yes.
So I have never been a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I played, like, the first 2 games. It's just, like, it's never been for me. But I know people really, really liked the last couple of games, I think.
The last couple, the epic ones. The most recent one that came out, the Basim one that came out this year was not or last year was not, like, it. That was more of, like, an old school one. This, like the Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla are the ones that have basically made the game into your traditional.
It turned into
Ubisoft.
Sort of like yeah. Because I remember, like, the first one came out and people were hyped for it, and then, like, 2 came out, like the Ezio trilogy. I think people really liked, and then it was like 3 was meh, Black Flag was Rogue. Unity.
Black Flag is beloved. But it's the one exception in that, like, middle period.
Yeah, it feels like that middle period of 3 Black Flag, Rogue, Unity, Syndicate. I don't even know what the fuck that one is.
That was the Industrial Revolution England one.
Oh.
So where you play
and
as
then they came out with
siblings.
Origins. I remember people thinking Origins, Odyssey, and then Valhalla, I remember hearing was really, really good. And then I guess Mirage was the more recent one, which I guess reminded people of that sort of, like, mediocre middle era so far.
Yeah.
So look, I'm probably not going to play it, but of course, straight cisgender white men on the internet cannot stand when they are not the default.
That was that was the other thing I really enjoyed, is that because they knew they couldn't be like, why can't it be a white man, like, in that role, because that that
it just goes to obvious historical accuracy.
Well, no, there are some people that were bemoaning the lack of Japanese representation in main characters in video games, which I just thought was the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It's not like, you know, there's entire swaths of games based with Japanese male main protagonists that were developed in Japan by Japanese development teams, including one of the biggest games that's come out this year so far that has a bevy of Japanese male characters. Just like I said, completely predictable. Micah was very happy to not be on this week because he didn't feel like talking about it, because it was just it's just a completely predictable story of people online getting mad about things because what they really want to say they know is, you know, blatantly racist or misogynist or whatever, so they have to code it in this, you know, fucking faux outrage nonsense that you see here, which again was predictable, which is a shame because, like I said, I think that cast a bit of a cloud over the announcement of the game itself, and I think we're going to see the same kind of reaction when the game actually releases as well, which is a which is a bummer. Like I said, I'm curious about the game. It's one of the games that I am looking forward to that's coming out later this year.
Here's what I'll say about this game is that if it lands on like Game Pass, I'll play it on Game Pass. I'm not spending money on it, but I'll play it on Game Pass.
It'll be on Ubisoft's Game Pass thing eventually. Like, they have their own subscription service.
Do you think I want to give Ubisoft any of my money?
I don't think anybody wants to give Ubisoft money if they don't have to. But we'll see. But I am ready for a new one of these because Valhalla came out 4 years ago now at this point. So like that's. I
just remember people loving Valhalla, and I was like, good for Assassin's Creed fans.
I think of that three, like Odyssey, which was the Greek one, was the one that's most beloved.
Okay.
I think Valhalla actually is the least of those three that like from the fan perception, because it's the most bloated of the three. Like, there's way too many things to do in the game. Like I was playing that game at regular pace and then realized that about 40 to 45 hours in, I was only halfway through the main campaign, so then I just started beelining it through the main story. It's one of those. It's one of those. There's a lot of icons on the map as you're walking around. So, as is a traditional Ubisoft game.
Yeah.
So AC Shadows is something I'm looking forward to. Last show, I should say, Amir asked, are there any games, indie or AAA, releasing this year that anybody is anticipating? So we didn't answer that in the last show in the post office because I figured that we would spin it off onto a whole ass segment to talk about, since we're about the halfway point of the year. What is coming out that we're looking forward to the rest of this year? And fortunately, like I said, you said you had a very small list. I have a very big list, but mine is all like indie and niche stuff aside from Assassin's Creed. Like, everything else is stuff that some people might have heard of and some people might not have heard of. So.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I don't really have my finger on the pulse of upcoming like notable indie game releases in the same way that you do. So, I mean, for me, the next big one is going to be Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, which is the sort of expanded, complete, game of the whatever the fuck you want to call it, like the final version of SMT 5, which was originally a Switch exclusive. So now Vengeance is going to be cross-platform. So I will look forward to playing it on Steam. Because when I was trying to play SMT 5 on my day one launch Switch, my poor little machine could just barely handle that. So I'm just really looking forward to playing that game. I hope it means more people will get into mainline Shin Megami Tensei, especially after the success of Persona 5, 5 Royal, and then 3 Reload. I hope that this is sort of more of a stepping stone moment into the rest of the SMT franchise, because it's a great franchise of RPGs. So that's my next big one that comes out like June 14th or something like that. So we're just a couple weeks away from that.
Okay. I'll start with a couple of mine. So the first one is Dune Awakening. That game looks really interesting to me. Kind of like the new Dune. I think it's like MMO-ish that's basically coming out. If I'm going to try to get into an MMO, I think this is going to be the one, because I feel too daunted getting into FF14 at this point because like I know what would lie ahead of me, and I also just don't have the time. So getting it on something on the ground floor seems a bit more interesting. Hyperlight Breaker is supposed to come out in early access this year.
No, sure.
This is the new 3D the new 3D combat roguelike from the makers of Hyperlight Drifter, as you might expect, which is a game that I really like. Obviously, instead of the top-down action, isometric action that they used to have in that game, this is a full like 3D, action combat. Looks like kind of like character action combat from the few things they've shown so far. I hope that makes early access this year. It was supposed to release late last year in early access, but they had to push it back just to spread things out. And then one more before you get to your next game, Mina the Hollower, I think is also supposed to come out this year. This is the new game from Yacht Club Games, who are the makers of Shovel Knight. And this is basically, from what little we've seen of it, looks like their take on like a Link's Awakening, essentially.
Yeah. Just looking at that graphically, it looks like a Game Boy Color Zelda title.
Yeah.
So
and,
that'd be interesting.
And plays like
I would
it too.
check that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it probably would be right up your alley.
I would check that out, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of the Game Boy Color Zelda titles. I mean, it's funny you bring up FF14 because my other one is or one of my other ones is the Dawn Trail expansion, which comes out this summer. I got into 14 in 2021. I have put a lot of hours into it. I'm really interested in what they're going to do with the story now that like this sort of Hydaelyn versus Zodiark saga is over. That was that was A Realm Reborn through Endwalker was all this. The overarching storyline was this like, the stuff with the God, I don't even remember what they're originally called. Like the ancients or the Ascians, the Ascians and their desire to resurrect Zodiark. And then it's like the more you learn about them, it's like, oh, maybe they're not just like this black and white villain sort of situation. It's really well done. Loved Endwalker. So now it's almost like cool. Dawn Trail's almost being framed as like a sort of summer vacation kind of storyline where it's the Warrior of Light and the Scions after having like put an end to this being that was trying to bring down all life in the universe. It's like, all right, it's time for some lighter fare, basically. It seems like we're going to a new part of the world and getting involved with some of the political machinations over there and whatnot. So I'm just very much looking forward to it. It seems like a much lighter time than what was going on in Shadowbringers and Endwalker, especially. So just looking forward to it.
For my next one is a new game from the folks that made Art of Rally, which is a very minimalist racing game that I like a lot. They're still updating today. It is called Golden Lap. It's their take on a racing management sim, but still in that very minimalist style. I think that they do some really cool stuff, the developers behind Art of Rally. So this was a automatic like on my radar as soon as it was announced a couple of months back. So Golden Lap looks pretty cool. Look. After that fucking trailer that lit up the internet for a couple days, I really need to see what Kingmakers is all about. This is the medieval themed strategy game that somehow has someone going back in time and bringing with them, vehicles and semi-automatic guns and stuff like that, and just shredding medieval soldiers. It looks terribly interesting from the trailer. We'll have to see if what the actual product lives up to the interest that the trailer generated, but I'm very curious to see more. And then one that also should be on your list that's coming out later this year is What the Car, which is the new game from the makers of What the Golf.
What the Golf?
Yeah. Look, they had a demo for What the Car at the most recent Steam Next Fest. There's a new Next Fest next week where they're going to have a new demo. So I'm going to check that out. Yeah, it looks very, very, or it's like what little I played is very, very fun. I love What the Golf, and I would imagine the irreverent humor in this game will be just as good, if not better.
Yeah. I've got two more on my list, and
Okay.
one of them I imagine is also on yours. Is I'm hoping we get the full release of Hades 2.
Oh, see. I'm not even counting that because I have that and have been playing it. So
Yeah, I mean it's hard to sort of count that, right?
yeah.
Because like early access has been so good. I feel like I have done everything that I can in early access. I've defeated Kronos twice, and I have hit the content wall on the surface twice. Um, and it's like I'm sure there's more to do. I know there's a couple other characters I haven't interacted with yet, but I don't just want to like keep throwing myself at something where I know there's really no major progression I can make anymore.
Hmm.
But it's great. It's a great time. So I'm very much looking forward to the full release of Hades 2, and I do hope that comes out by the end of the year. But I also understand that may be an early 2025 thing. So in that case, the other full game that is supposed to come out this fall is Sonic X Shadows
Oh
Generations.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, look, I really like Sonic Generations. I think Sonic Generations is, I think Sonic Generations until Sonic Frontiers came out was probably the best, like 3D Sonic that we had gotten in a long time. And I'm looking forward to the twist of adding Shadow as a playable character and seeing sort of how that expands on what was going on in the original release of Sonic Generations. But I hope it's good. The original Generations I thought was very good, so I hope they don't fuck it up. And I know that that's a coin flip with Sonic Team. Unfortunately, it's entirely possible that they will be significantly worse than the original release.
I thought that game came out already because all the Sonic games just run together in my head. So what came out last year? That everyone.
Sonic Superstars.
Okay, which people did not like.
I think people.
I'm talking about the 3D. I'm talking about the 3D Sonic game that came out last year.
I don't think there was a 3D Sonic game.
Are you sure?
Sonic Superstars is a 2D Sonic game.
I'm pretty sure there was a 3D Sonic
Sonic
game that came out last fall, and I think it released on like the same day as another. Yes, because it came out the same day as Mario Wonder, and
Superstars released the same time as Mario Wonder.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not a 3D game. It's a 2D game. I actually got it for Christmas last year. I still haven't played it. We've been busy with like.
Did
other,
I Mandela effect this Sonic 3D game?
Yes, you absolutely Mandela affected.
Oh my god! Hang on a second.
3D
No,
Sonic
this can't be true.
Because Superstars is not a 3D game. It is a 2D Sonic.
Most recent Sonic games. Sonic Frontiers.
Frontiers came out a couple years ago now.
Did it?
Yeah, Frontiers came out in 2022.
Oh my god, you're right, it did. Why is that?
And Frontiers was good. Frontiers was solid. But yeah, Sonic Superstars came out last year, and like it's not meant to be like a fucking big game-changing sort of deal. The big thing is like it's meant to be played cooperatively, almost in the same way of Mario Wonder. Incidentally enough, there's a lot of fun things you can do. You can play as Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, or Amy, and have up to 4 people playing at the same time. But yeah, it's like I still haven't played it yet, and I know in the grand scheme of things it's like a 7 out of 10 game, which is fine by me. I'm fine with it.
Look, a 7 out of 10 to a Sonic fan is a 10 out of 10.
Exactly. So I'm very much looking forward to the update, the Sonic X Shadow. So basically it's a remake of Sonic Generations, but also features a new campaign where you get to play as Shadow, as I guess you sort of relive some of the events of Shadow the Hedgehog, which is a game I have also played recently and I think is fine. It's not good, but I have fun with it, and that's what matters.
The last 3 for me. So the first one is Dread Pilots. This is the new game that's being published by Clay Entertainment, and I always check out anything that they put out. It looks like sort of a shmuppy version of a pick up and deliver game. Kind of gives me Pixel Junk Shooter vibes, which was a game that came out several years ago on PlayStation, which I really enjoyed. So
yeah, I kind of remember that.
Yep. So that hopefully that's good. And then the last 2 for me are 2 Civilization games. The first one is called Ara History Untold. This is a new Civ game that's being published by Microsoft. Which looks like it's really taking some different cues from the normal like 4X grand strategy genre than you typically see. And then the other one is not a game that's been officially announced yet, but everyone seems to think that Civ 7 is probably coming at some point this year, because those games don't tend to get a lot of build up. Like usually like they get like the kind of Bethesda style, we announce the game and 3 months later it comes out sort of thing. There's a lot of scuttlebutt in the industry that people are saying that Civ 7 should be coming soon. We're certainly on the timetable to get one. Civ 6 came out in 2016.
Oh yeah, it's been a few years.
Yeah, and this is the longest gap between mainline Civ releases, that they've ever had. So I'm hoping that comes out this fall, and if it does, I will be devouring it voraciously when it does come through. So there you go, Amir. That answers your question. Hopefully we put a couple games on people's radars you might not have heard of, and that's a great time for us to take a quick break, and we will be back with the news.
Hell yeah. All
right, so let's start with some more news from Microsoft, who apparently, according to Satya Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft proper, not just of Xbox, Microsoft might be eliminating red lines around their games to release on other consoles. So we've seen, in the past couple months, Microsoft putting some of their exclusive games out there on other platforms, most notably Grounded, Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, all got recent releases on Switch and PlayStation.
Basically, like the games that they've put out so far have either been your sort of like MMO-ish games, so Sea of Thieves and Grounded being those two, and then like your sort of indie darling games like Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush.
Yes, stuff that is not driving the sale of Xbox consoles, let's say.
Right. But that Microsoft owns the rights to outright, and that they can still profit from by selling copies on other consoles.
Yes. But possibly Microsoft management might want that to extend to their full catalog of games, which means that we could potentially eventually see like the Halo series, the Gears of War series, Fable, pick your Microsoft franchise, and see that on other consoles.
Master Chief in Smash Bros. Confirmed.
I mean that would have to happen, right? Like if that's
right. I mean, you kind of figure
if we went there. This news wasn't as shocking as it might have been 6 months ago, but it just kind of feel like that we've been slowly headed towards this direction anyway, with Microsoft as a platform.
Between, everything that's been going on at that company, the massive layoffs, it feels like, if they really start to put what I guess you would qualify as your prestige, Microsoft exclusives on other platforms, I think that's going to really be it for Microsoft as a hardware company in the gaming space. I think they will simply exist to put out games on other platforms. I think if they put Halo or Gears of War out on PlayStation and or Nintendo, let's just say for the hell of it, not that either would have a enormous audience on the Switch, but let's just say for the hell of it, these games, these titles perform gangbusters on Sony and Nintendo consoles. I think that's it. I think at that point they're going to be like, okay, cool, we are just going to be a publisher of video games and we're not going to have our own console for it anymore. I think they may basically end up seeing the PC as their console to a degree, rather than spending a lot of money doing R&D, and the production of these consoles is not cheap. I know that it's not something, especially in the first year or so of a new console release, it's not something that they make a lot of money on. So I have to wonder if they're basically doing this as a way to sort of determine if they want to sort of stay in the hardware race in the gaming space when we start seeing whatever the next generation is going to truly end up being. It wouldn't surprise me to see them say, you know what, we're done. We're done doing hardware. We're just going to be a third-party publisher of software for other companies at this point.
My thoughts on this, I partially agree with you, but my thoughts on this are really scatterbrained because their strategy seems really scatterbrained to me. I think Microsoft for sure has at least one more generation of hardware left, only because they've probably invested a lot of money into whatever the next generation of hardware is going to be at this point already. I mean, we're, you know, we're 4+ years away from when this generation of consoles released. So I think they've been working on a new Xbox. Now, what that new Xbox could be, I think they've kind of been telegraphing it a little bit in some of the comments that Phil Spencer's made of wanting to see other platforms. I almost wonder if Microsoft thinks that the way forward from a hardware standpoint is to kind of be what the Steam machine never quite got, like kind of the idea behind the Steam machine, but better execution, of basically having a console that for all intents and purposes is a PC console, and you can install other like storefronts and stuff like that on there like you can with a PC, but it's a bit more user friendly and doesn't give you the full swath of customization that a full-fledged PC would offer you, but it also is going to be, I would imagine, considerably cheaper than a full-fledged PC would be. Is there a market for that product? Maybe. I mean, there wasn't when Valve did it, but Valve also kind of did it, a little half-handed. When they kind of rolled the Steam machines out, they did it as a passing fancy and not something that I would imagine that Microsoft would do, which would be put a lot of marketing dollars behind it and, really try to explain what it is. So I think that's part one to that story. The second thing is getting games on other platforms is interesting, but I'm also not sure what they'd be looking to accomplish. Let's just take PlayStation, because I think Nintendo exists in sort of a different space. So if you put your Halo and Gears and all these Xbox exclusives that are coming out that you have and stuff that's just come out, like Senua's Sacrifice and whatever, that goes on PlayStation. Are you looking to sell full-priced, copies of these games on PlayStation, or are you looking to sell Game Pass on PlayStation? Would Sony want you to market Game Pass on PlayStation? You know what I mean? Like what's and if you sell Game Pass on PlayStation, does that even help you if you're Microsoft? Because we've seen already with some of the moves that they made recently, Game Pass doesn't seem to be the way forward. Like, they've kind of plateaued their Game Pass subscriptions, and I would imagine that if you made that available on PlayStation and on Switch, you would see another rise, but that would eventually plateau as well. Like, I think that there's a hard limit for the amount of Game Pass subscribers that you're going to have out there. So I don't know if that is the way forward, but by all these games releasing on Game Pass day and date, I think I've turned around on like how smart that is. Like, I think that was very smart to get people in the door, but I think it's had the weird byproduct of somewhat devaluing some of these games. Like,
oh, it absolutely has.
Yeah, because like they're selling a new Hellblade game for $40, but they're also saying that, like, hey, like, you could just pay $10 for this and just play it, because it's not going to take you more than a month to beat the new Hellblade.
It's not going to take you more than a week to beat the new Hellblade.
So, like I said, they're just in such a weird spot right now, and they seem. It seems like they don't know what they want to do right now, or they don't know what the way forward is right now. They're just kind of saying shit. Now, it makes sense to me that Microsoft's executives want to do this, because I'm sure they're seeing, okay, these games are selling what they're selling, but we're limiting it to this platform. If we want to sell this software and we want to recoup our development investment, like, we have to make it available in more spaces, and Steam can't be the only space outside of Xbox that we have this available on. So we might have to start thinking of some different ways. It's a weird situation to be in. But I think you're right. I think eventually this leads to them getting out of the hardware business. But I don't think it's going to be quite as quick as some people think it will be. I think it's still going to be some time before they decide they don't want to make a new box to sell to people.
Yeah. Well, only time will tell.
Some news from PlayStation. Of course, Jim Ryan retired earlier this year, CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment. And when a luminary, when a visionary like Jim Ryan retires, one mere mortal could not possibly replace the titan of industry that was Jim Ryan. So Sony has decided that they will have two CEOs that will now be heading up Sony Interactive Entertainment. Herman Hulst will now be the CEO of the Studio Business Group, who will be responsible for all PlayStation game content. And Hideki Nishino will be the CEO of the Platform Business Group, which will see him be responsible for technology, product, services, and platform experience, as well as third-party relations, yada, yada, yada. So basically, it seems like they want Herman Hulst to run the games and Hideki Nishino to run everything else, essentially.
All right.
What do we think about the dual CEO strategy? Famously, one of the best strategies to run a company with is having two people at the top.
I mean, we'll see what happens. Ultimately, like, obviously, these are people. These are two dudes who have a lot of experience in the industry. You know, the former head of PlayStation Studios, and then the former senior vice presidents of the Platform Experience Group. I like to hope that their experiences and their knowledge will be complementary to each other. And maybe this will be great. This will work out really well for Sony. I feel like, historically speaking, having double CEOs is generally not great, and usually one person ends up quitting pretty quickly in the process when they realize that they can't work well with the other person.
Right.
So,
I mean, I think the one smart thing they did is make a very clear line of demarcation
that's
between their
for
responsibilities. Sure. And again, Herman Hulst, this is the guy who once was the head of Guerrilla Games, who are the makers of Killzone and the Horizon series for PlayStation. So he definitely knows game development. Totsuki comes from the hardware side of the business, so he certainly knows that aspect as well. So this seems like this should work out okay, but again, history is littered with a lot of companies doing this, and it never ends well. Most recently, see Blizzard Entertainment, when they had Mike Ibarra and Jen O'Neill appointed as co-CEOs, and I think Jen O'Neill left like 3 weeks later. So like I said, it doesn't always go well. So we talked last show about Take-Two, or a couple shows ago, about Take-Two Games closing studios, laying off staff, and basically they were supposed to be the chosen one. Strauss-Zelnick's out here a couple months ago being like, yeah, we don't need to reduce costs. Like, we're still doing quite well. And then all of a sudden, no, we need to reduce costs. For some reason, in interviews now, Strauss-Zelnick is saying, no, we did not close those studios. Here's the quote from him when asked why by IGN's Rebecca Valentine as to why they shuttered those studios. Quote, "We didn't shutter those studios, to be clear, and we're always looking at our release schedule across all of our studios to make sure that it makes sense. So we're being very judicious because we are in the middle of a cost reduction program that we've already concluded and are now fully rolling out. We've announced that we're saving $165 billion in existing and future costs, but we haven't shuttered anything." And then, Valentine followed up by asking if he was denying the reports of Roll7 and Intercept's studio closures. And then a Take-Two PR rep had to come in over the top saying, quote, "In the 8K filing that we put out, we talked about the cost reduction plan is approximately 5% reduction in headcount worldwide, but we did not give a label-by-label breakdown of what that looks like." I just find this fucking statement from Strauss-Zelnick just...
And then, IGN was, really trying to clarify, is you're saying these still exist, and then the PR person was like, "We have not provided any additional color beyond what I just said," which is just
yeah.
So what are you saying?
I just find it so incredibly disrespectful to the people who lost their jobs and the studios that, to be clear, have closed. One day, Roll7 and Intercept were making games, and the next day they were no longer making games anymore. So yeah. I don't know why Strauss-Zelnick doesn't want to call that a shuttering of studios. I guess he thinks from a public relations perspective that closing a studio looks bad. But it looks worse.
Which, to be fair, it does.
Yeah, it does. But I feel like denying reality, the reality that everyone knows is correct, is a worse look, arguably, than closing the studios. I just don't get this at all. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't think the PR person here did their job very well. I mean, I guess if you still own like the trademark to these studio names, you can say that they still exist in some
But
capacity.
to what end?
But like, you know, it's I don't know. It's very very strange.
Well, and what's funny
And very
is that
disrespectful, again, as you said, to the people who actually lost their jobs here.
and what's funny is that apparently people went back and when 2K closed some studios back in 2016, I think I saw, like 2K Marin and things of that nature. Apparently, he used like the same language where he's like, "No, we didn't close those studios. Like, we just had to reduce cost and like, bro, like I don't like we see what's happened. You are making this worse by just being like, yeah, like it really sucks. We have to make tough decisions sometimes, and we feel for those people that lost their jobs. But instead, like, we didn't close anything. Like these studios still, in your mind's eye, still exist today. As long as the products they made are out there, they'll always exist in your heart, just not tangibly in
Right.
reality. So, very fucking weird quotes from him here. We'll end the news segment with a couple the bad news stories this week in layoffs. Phoenix Labs, who are the makers of Dauntless and Fae Farm, laid off about 140 employees and canceled some unannounced in-development game projects to double down on supporting Dauntless and Fae Farm, which is a huge bummer. This is a studio who, like I said, Dauntless, I played Dauntless, liked Dauntless a lot, put about 50, 60 hours into it. I know Terrence did as well. The Monster Hunter like that Dauntless basically is. Fae Farm is like a cozy farming sim that came out last year that has had some positive buzz about it as well. So this is a bummer. This is a this is a case of a smaller studio that just finds itself in dire straits right now, that just needs to close down for their own well-being. So it still sucks for the people affected. And if you thought that the gaming consolidation has been limited to game studios, think again, because
Incorrect.
Yeah, Games Media also being hit by this as well, as IGN owner Ziff Davis has bought the Gamer Network from ReedPop, which has sites like Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, GamesIndustry.biz, and VG247, and immediately after doing so, laid off several folks at a lot of these outlets, citing redundancies from these acquisitions.
That's sucks. Media consolidations are happening all over the place as well, and so Games Media is just as much a part of that as anything else. But yeah, this is a situation of very much a redundancy issue rather than rather than corporations squeezing for the sake of improving their bottom line. Doesn't make it any better.
Right.
Still sucks, and it sucks to have less competition within games media too. I think, at least speaking for myself, it was nice to know that, like, Rock Paper Shotgun and VG247 were separate from IGN. But at the end of the day, most of these sites would have, beat reporters, right? You have like your Nintendo beat reporter and your Sony and, your indie games beat reporter and stuff like that. And so you don't need that many people on a single beat. That's just how journalism works. So this is unsurprising, but still very unfortunate for folks. So.
I will say it does look like that, and at least it's been in recent times, where there is an opening for folks in games media that, especially if they have like a dedicated followings and they knew what their traffic was on those sites, there's been some success in a lot of games media folks, striking out on their own and doing an independent thing. We saw it with Remap when Vice closed down. We saw it with Aftermath, which pulled in a lot of folks from various sites who decided to leave and do their own thing, and we've seen it with Second Wind, who's basically The Escapist 2.0, when everybody
Mm-hmm.
from the Escapist game coverage quit en masse when they fired their editor-in-chief. So like I said, we've seen success, so I hope the people that are affected might be able to jump on that bandwagon and maybe have some success doing that as well. So we'll take another quick break, and then we'll talk about what I've been playing right after this. So yeah, like I mean, we've been talking all year about how like while it's been a bummer year for the games industry, it's still been a really good year for gamers in general. Like the strong releases of 2023 have continued into 2024. First quarter of the year, we saw a lot of big AAA releases that were pretty good. We've been seeing a lot of smaller indie releases in the past couple of months that have also been high caliber. So of course, with all this new game newness around me, the game that I've been playing literally like 50 hours of over the last 2 weeks has been Diablo 4. Because you know, when there's all this new stuff around you, always good to go back to some old comfort food.
Hey.
But in all seriousness, the reason I have been playing Diablo 4 is because they did just launch their new season, which is called Loot Reborn. And they basically rolled out a new patch that really changes two of the biggest criticisms levied at Diablo 4 through its first almost year of being out. And that is the fact that there's not enough challenging endgame content once you reach the endgame, and there's not and that loot is really confusing and how they have items set up. So they work to address that, and I think they've done a pretty good job. Like I said, I played in the past 2 weeks 50 hours worth, which is a lot of Diablo 4. Max level to character. I'm deeper in a Diablo endgame than I think I've ever been at this point so far. And I just started a new character to roll today. Like that's how much fun I've been having playing. So from the content, as far as like activity standpoint, they've made the 1 to 100 journey much faster and much more fun.
Okay.
The Helltide, which is kind of like the high level world zone that used to spawn every couple of hours in game, is now basically up all the time. Like basically it's always up. One of the regions on the map is always in Helltide, and you can also access it from the first two world tiers, which you had to do it from world tier 3 and 4 earlier. Now all the world tiers have access to it. It's now the most efficient way to level from 1 to 50 until you get into world tier 3, because there's just a shitload of monster density. Like there's tons of ad mobs, and it's just fun to play. Like it's just fun to mow through and pick up rewards, and it ties into this season's seasonal mechanic, which is really lightly applied this year. Once you get into world tier 3 and 4, like you're still doing your nightmare dungeons, but once you get to close to max level, that's where they kind of have shifted into the pursuit of items being kind of the end game activity, and they're kind of cyclical with each other, which is what you want from an ARPG. Like you want to have the push to be do content to get good gear, which you can then make better, which lets you challenge the other content that's in the game, and that's kind of what you want the flow to be. So the thing they've done with items is, first of all, they've made items very easy to see if they're good or not, which in Diablo 4 before was very difficult, because they had all of these like conditional affixes that would roll on these items. So we're like, hey, like this item like will do 20% damage or 20% more damage against vulnerable elite enemies. Like that's a very specific use case for an item. They got rid of all the conditional shit. So now like all the stats that roll are stuff that will just help your character across the board. Like there's no more conditionality. So that's great. Because they got rid of all the conditional affixes, once you get to a certain level, you don't need to give a shit about rares anymore. Like all you need to care about is legendaries. And because and gear drops less frequently than it did
so
before.
You're not carrying around a bunch of junk.
Right. But now like the stuff that drops has a chance to actually be good. They've also fixed tier 3 and tier 4. So before in tier 3 you would get a chance to get a sacred version of an item, which was slightly better than the regular, and then in tier 4 you could get an ancestral version of an item, which was slightly better than sacred. Now in tier 3 all you get are sacreds, and in tier 4 all you get are ancestrals, so you don't have to play that game anymore. And then they've also added the greater affix system, which randomly you might get a item that has what's called a greater affix, which normally, like when an item drops, it'll have like every stat that's on it will roll in a range essentially that's on the piece of gear, and it might be from like anywhere from 50% to 100%, let's say. A greater affix will take one of those random stats and make it 150%. And you can get a piece of gear that has multiple greater affixes on it potentially. Like I have one ring that I got that has all three affixes are upgraded, which is fucking awesome. Like gives you a nice boost and a nice start out. And that ties into the new tempering and masterwork system. So tempering lets you roll, and this is like a random roll, lets you roll build specific affixes onto your legendary gear. So basically, like as you go through the game, you collect these crafting recipes that'll be like, hey, like this crafting recipe will give you 4 options to help upgrade like your berserking stat if you're a barbarian, and then you can take that and roll that onto a piece of gear. Now, what's random is that there are 4 different things that you might roll, and those all roll in a range. So like there's still some gambling aspect to it, but it's much more of a targeted improvement than just rolling in a complete random pool of affixes. And if you don't like what you get, you can re-roll to try to get something else. But each item can only be re-rolled like I think 5 times total. So like you eventually have to, you're either going to get stuck with something or you hopefully get the thing that you want. And then once you have tempered something, you can then start masterworking it. So masterworking, you apply. It's very costly. There's specific materials that you have to get from a new activity that they put in the game, but it lets you basically upgrade all the stats on the item, including the tempered stats, 5%. And then every 4 masterwork levels, one of the stats will randomly go up 25%. So that's kind of where the end game progression comes in, where you make yourself super powerful, and you get these materials by running the new end game activity called the Pit, which is basically the same as like the Greater Rifts from Diablo 3, where you just go in, kill a bunch of monsters, beat a boss, and then you get crafting materials. But that's kind of the end game pursuit, because the Pit starts at level 100 and then gets more difficult from there. So like right now, like I'm like my highest Pit that I've cleared is level 138. So like my gear is tempered up to a point where I can actually take on like level 138 monsters, even though I'm level 100, because obviously that's the level cap. And that's kind of the end game pursuit, is to push yourself in the Pit to get those materials, to make your weapons and all your gear, as powerful as it can be. And eventually what you want to get to is they have level 200 versions of the uber bosses that they have in the game. And that's where you can get the best chance of like the best gear, like uber uniques and the stuff like that to drop. It's been really satisfying to play. I think that if you played Diablo IV at launch and kind of bounced off, this might be a good time to come back, because again, they from a quality of life standpoint, they just really improved how the game feels to play, and the leveling journey that you have in the game is much smoother. There's more stuff to do. Like nightmare dungeons are still there. You still got to level up your glyphs and all that stuff. But it's just fun. Like it's just super fun at this point. And I'm gonna continue playing it. Like the season runs until August, and it's gonna take me a little bit. Like I've bounced off of Hades for now because I'm playing too much Diablo. Essentially, I'll come back to Hades later. But right now I'm playing Diablo 4. It's very, very good.
Sick.
Yeah. So
I haven't really been playing anything new.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll go to the post office, where you can join our Discord, dentpixels.com/fans, and ask us questions that we will answer on the show. Just like Cam did, who said, if you had to pick between wrestling tattoos for yourself personally, would you rather pick Cody Rhodes' neck tattoo or MJF's new Prison Ink leg tattoo?
All right. So I'm looking at both of these tattoos.
I haven't seen the MJF one yet myself, so I need to Google this.
So Cody Rhodes' tattoo is a neck tattoo one,
yes,
which is one that you would generally refer to as something called a job stopper. So, I have no intention of ever getting a neck tattoo, much less one that is a skull that is very large on his neck. It's a skull with the little wings, and it's got the American flag on it, right? Because he's the American Knight, right? Yes. So, between the two, So the MJF tattoo, which I had to look up because I had no fucking clue what Cam was talking about here. I knew what Cody Rhodes looked like, but it's the MJF's is a what you would refer to as an American traditional style. It is a single poker chip that says AEW on it, and it has a scroll around it that says "Bet on yourself." It is a black and gray piece rather than a full color piece. That which Cody Rhodes's is full color on his neck. So look, it's also on his leg and is very easy to just not look at. So between the two, just in terms of like tattoo, like if I had to get the same tattoo in the same placement, I would get the fucking MJF's tattoo. One, because it's black and gray and therefore is going to age much better than a full color tattoo. Now I say this having had a lot of full color work done, but I have to work really hard to maintain this. And it's very difficult to maintain a full color tattoo on your neck. But just based on placement, style, and the general sentiment, I would go with the Bet on Yourself poker chip tattoo over the American flag skull American Nightmare neck tattoo.
That was a very nuanced and expert level response. My response would be more basic. Neck tattoos are the worst. like I don't care what the MJF tattoo is, and I've seen it and it's fine, like you said. It can be covered up. Everyone is going to see that fucking neck tattoo, no matter what. And like if you're Cody Rhodes, I have multiple
tattoos on my legs that most people haven't even seen.
Yeah, so, like if you're Cody Rhodes, like not a big deal, obviously. Like you're Cody Rhodes, that's kind of right. like that fucking logo is your whole goddamn brand. But literally anybody else, no, it's terrible. Obviously, the MJF tattoo is the way to go. Yeah. Mark says, this is a new variation on Fuck, Marry, Kill that I haven't seen. Fuck, Marry, Kill, Eat between Todd Howard, Bobby Kotick, Randy Pitchford, and Peter Molyneux.
This is fucking terrible.
Well, I mean, obviously, like we're gonna kill Bobby Kotick, right?
I feel like for the good of society, you kind of have to. That being said, as a woman, I could get away with marrying him and then divorcing his ass and taking all his money. So that's like, those are my two thoughts. But no, probably, you kill Bobby Kotick. I would say you eat Peter Molyneux, just because it's a way to get rid of him too, and because he's a little dude. There's not much there. Probably wouldn't taste very good.
I would eat Randy Pitchford just because he's much more of a pest. You know what I mean? He's kind of an obnoxious dude.
He is.
I guess fuck Peter Molyneux and then marry Todd Howard. Like I guess
I would probably go with marry Todd Howard just because I feel like between the four of them he's the most tolerable.
But you're not fucking Randy Pitchford though.
Oh God. I feel like I would fuck Randy Pitchford before I would fuck Peter Molyneux.
but while you're fucking Peter Molyneux, he could explain to you how like the sex is like sex that you've never experienced before because of this it's like he has this new technique that like no one's ever seen. It's gonna be revolutionary for the entire world and all this other shit. So you got that going for you, at least.
It would be the driest sex I've ever had in my life, Brad.
With that, we'll move on to Film Wanderer, who says, what gaming studio that is currently defunct would you like to see come back? Some examples they gave are Clover, Volition, Acclaim, and LJN. Nobody wants to see LJN come back. It's fine. Man, studios that have shut down.
Clover would be a good one. There's your, fucking Okami devs, right? Yep.
I'm Googling a couple prominent studios that have closed real quick so I can help jog my...
I would go with Quintet.
Okay.
Quintet, if you are unfamiliar, is the studio that developed ActRaiser, Illusion of Gaia, Terra Nigma, Soul Blazer, as well as supporting the development of the original Shenmue game, but I think you look at what they were able to do for Enix in the early 90s, and it's a lot of very impactful RPGs, and I would be very curious to see what that particular dev team would do today.
Oh, let's see here. Let's see. I'm scrolling through real quick. I mean, Neversoft is a good one. Who worked on the Tony Hawk games? They would be a good option, I think. Ensemble worked on like Halo Wars and Age of Empire and stuff like that. A lot of really popular strategy games that a lot of folks pine for. Speaking of Peter Molyneux, you got Lionhead in there doing, Fable and a couple other things, which they could, be still doing some interesting stuff. I don't know. Out of those, I think Ensemble would be the one that I'd like because I'm starting to get into more of those games. And so, seeing stuff that's out there that they did would probably be the most impactful for me personally. Also, too, the what was the goddamn, what was the Wipeout studio whose name is escaping me now? They would also be a good one on the list to see come back.
Studio Liverpool.
They became Psionics is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that'd be a good one too. And then finally, T-Wash asks, what game release at GameStop was the most memorable for you? Now, I could see you going two different ways, because there's one that I think you and I might be simpatico on, because we did it together, and then there's one that would be memorable for you for very different reasons.
I mean, the two that come to mind are Skyrim. Because that was one that we worked together, was Skyrim. And I just remember being kind of blown away by how many dorks we had in that store for an RPG. It's like we had as many people in there for Skyrim as we had for like fucking Call of Duty that year. I just remember being very surprised by Skyrim. And of course, the impact of Skyrim was massive and is still felt today in a lot of ways. And the other one was Destiny, which is the midnight release that I worked and then turned in my keys at the end of the night because I was fucking done, because I had told the manager I had been working for that I either needed to. So at the time, quick story. I was working for that store, for that manager in grad school. So I had other priorities, right? And I was being worked like 35 hours a week at the SGA rate of, I was a key holder, but I was the only SGA at that store. But I was being paid, I think like $9.85 an hour, just like abysmal, right? And I remember telling him, like, I either need you to advocate for me to get like an ASM position, or I need you to roll my hours back to like 20 hours a week, because I need the hours in my week to actually focus on graduate school. And if you can't do these things for me, then I'm going to quit. And then we had the opportunity. There was an ASM opening in that store, and instead he hired a straight white boy from outside of the company to fill that ASM position, who then I was responsible for training on all of the GameStop systems and processes. And then, so I quit while that manager was at conference that year because I wanted it to be as big of a fuck you as it possibly could be. So I quit. I finished working the original Destiny launch night, and then I turned in my keys at the end of the night. I remember getting a text from him afterwards that said, I fail to understand what happened tonight. And I remember being like, how the fuck do you fail to understand what happens? Like, I told you this is what was gonna happen.
Well, and I remember that you had told me like your trials and tribulations up to that point, and so I remember at that conference, like he was completely befuddled. Like turned to me, was like, Carrie's turning her keys, and I was like, yeah, I can see that. Like, yeah, I can see that. I was like, bro, isn't she even asking you to either work less hours, and you're still like working her there? He's like, yeah, but like, I just don't understand why she would do that like during fucking Destiny, like of all times. I'm like, no, what are you gonna do? So
be thankful that I chose to actually work
the
that
launch.
night at Destiny and was nice enough to the guy who got the job that I should have gotten, to ensure that he wasn't basically flying solo on a launch night.
Skyrim was memorable because I remember not thinking like that was an eye opener for me because I had no context for the Elder Scrolls at that point in time, and I was like to you, I was like, this will be a small midnight. And you're like, I don't know, man, like could be pretty fucking busy. And you're right, like there was literally as many people there, like you said, for as there was for a Call of Duty launch. And then the other one that sticks out in my mind is Grand Theft Auto 5, just because
Oh yeah, dude.
I don't think I've, aside from a Black Friday when we first started doing like midnight openings for Black Friday, I've never seen more people in that store. And the store that we worked at the time, Towson Marketplace, was a huge GameStop.
That had a movie stop attached.
Yeah,
to
that had
it
a
on
movie
the other
stop
half of the
attached.
building. If any of you listeners remember Movie Stop, that experiment.
I've never seen more people in that store than I did for that launch.
I don't think I worked that launch with you.
I don't think you
I don't
did.
think I was working at your store anymore at that point. I think I worked that launch. But I think I was working it in like Cockeysville or something like that. But like, it was the most insane amount of people at a midnight launch in my tenure there, from like whatever it was, 2009 to 2014. Like nuts.
And what's funny is though I hated working them with a passion, because I just hated being up and doing work that late. At the same time, like the midnight launches ended up always being like some of the most pleasurable times because you always had like your regulars that you knew. Everyone was really excited to be there because they're getting this new game that's coming out. The vibes were just generally good at the midnight launch. And I remember eventually coming up with a really efficient system to making them work really well. So they always went off without a hitch, even if we had like 150 people show up at the stuff. So
I generally liked doing midnight launches. I can't remember doing a midnight launch where I was like having a bad time. I want to say like the launches I really liked doing were when we would open up maybe like an hour or two early on a Sunday for Pokemon before Pokemon kind of turned into midnight launches as well. Because that was always really pleasant, and like everyone would show up wearing their Pokemon gear and just be really excited and just sort of like happy to be there in the morning to get the new Pokemon game. Yeah, I always, even when it was games that like I didn't give a shit about, like Gears of War, I remember working with like I think you and Mike Eversley, and I just remember Mike brought like shoe polish for us to like, we would always dress up.
Oh no, that was MW3. I still have pictures of that on my phone. Yeah, it was Modern Warfare 3. I have a picture. I have a picture of you and him with like camo black all over your face.
Camo black. Yeah, generally it's like there would always be some sort of pain in the ass customer that it would be like 2 minutes before midnight. I remember this happened at the Skyrim launch. Some dude showed up like 2 minutes before midnight with like 50 games to trade in or some shit like that. I was like, can I put this towards Skyrim? And I was like, you can wait. Like,
well, that was the thing. Like for those high maintenance people, like those were the times where you could be like, look, man, like I'm sorry, like I'm gonna sacrifice your happiness for the other 100 people that I would piss off a lot more if we didn't take them first. So we're gonna do this. You can stand over here, and then we'll get your trade in when you're whenever.
And like that, there was always one of those dudes. Like every midnight launch, there was always one of those dudes. But yeah, I have very fond memories, I think, of working a lot of the midnight releases. Generally, people were just like excited about the new thing. Generally, people were really nice to us. And they like a lot of times they would send us things to like wear or give out during like the special events and whatnot. So yeah, but agreed. So for me, like Skyrim and Destiny are probably my top two, with GTA 5 definitely in the mix there for most memorable.
I knew Destiny would be on there for at least for very.
I mean, yeah, it's when I quit. So.
Oh, Well, I think thank you guys for those questions. We have reached the end of this episode. Of course, don't forget to join our Discord at densepixels.com/fans. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast feed and download TNP Studios Premium. $5 a month or $50 for the full year to get access to the premium slate of shows at densepixels.com/premium. Thank you guys very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you all the next time.
See ya.
You're watching the Dense Pixels YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button while you're here and make sure you check out our weekly podcast where we discuss the latest gaming news and our impressions on what games we've been playing.